Hey, there we go. Today we're going to talk about another overlooked platformer. This will be Gex Enter the Gecko, one of my favorite childhood games. Well, what do you know? For anyone who's been following the channel for a while, that clip may be strange and out of place to you. And you know what? That's exactly what it is, because this video was filmed nearly 10 years ago at this point. I've been doing videos since my early childhood, and I thought it'd be fun to revisit this one, as it's been a long time coming for me to express my love for this particular franchise. But today, I'm not going to cover Gex Enter the Gecko like I planned to last decade. Instead, let's go back even earlier. I've got the original Gex for the Sega Saturn here today on Game & Browse. So, let's jump into your phone booth and dial up the game room, because it's time to get started. So as I mentioned, this is the Saturn version of Gex, which as I know is technically an inferior port. But I opted for this version because I wanted to expand our Sega Saturn library, so I figured, why not? It also doesn't help that the original version of the game, released for the Panasonic 3DO in April of 1995, is inaccessible to us, as we do not have a 3DO console. The Sega Saturn version came out on December 18, 1995, alongside the Sony PlayStation port. There would also eventually be a PC version of Gex released in November of 1996. Now going back to what I said previously, what makes this version inferior? The answer is basically nothing. The various iterations of Gex function and play the exact same way. However, you cannot save the game. That function only exists on the 3DO version. I know that Gex was made with the 3DO in mind, so much so that he's almost an unofficial mascot for the console, but in my opinion, that's just clear-cut lazy development. We definitely know that both the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation are more than capable of saving games. We even did an episode on the Sony Pocket Station, so I think I'm qualified to make that claim. Also, click it. But instead, you're stuck with an old, outdated password system. Thankfully, the passwords aren't insanely long or anything, but there's just no excuse for the system to be present in the first place. It's a total inconvenience on the player in an era where saving one's game was really more or less commonplace. But to be fair, the Gex series as a whole has been the subject of a strange tug of war regarding its various ports across systems, but we'll save that story for another day. Well, maybe. Anyway, back to Gex on the Saturn. Being a product of the 90s, Gex was firmly entrenched in a time where mascot-based gaming was a way of life. He was even the official mascot for developer Crystal Dynamics all the way up until the 2000s. The titular character was designed as a wisecracking, sleazy, anthropomorphic gecko, made to compete with other platformer mascots like Mario and Sonic. While Mario is as docile as it gets, Sonic can get up there with the brash attitude. But Gex was even more cutthroat. He even had an X Factor, or Gex Factor if you will. He's voiced by stand-up comedian and writer Dana Gould, helping solidify some of that trademark snarkiness. In PAL regions, this was not always the case. While the first Gex was still voiced by Dana Gould, in the second and third games, it was decided that Gex would be portrayed by a British voice actor instead, to better connect with the regional audience. Therefore, Gex 2 Enter the Gecko would feature the talents of Leslie Phillips. People in the United States might recognize Phillips as the voice of the Sorting Hat from the Harry Potter films. Gex 3 Deep Cover Gecko would bring on Danny John Jules of BBC's Red Dwarf. Personally, it was a bit strange to hear these other voice actors, since I'm so familiar with Dana Gould being the voice of Gex. But despite the new voice and mannerisms, the heart of the character remains steadfast.
Gex himself is a cable television junkie, a trait that not only completely influences the world of his games, but also allows him to break the fourth wall with referential jokes and one-liners that MST3Ks just about everything that was on TV and cinema up until this time.
And as such, two things can be immediately noted about that.
One, it makes him very annoying from time to time, as he will not shut up, sort of like a reptilian Deadpool. Two, it also makes him very dated. Many jokes still work, but only if you can stand his too cool for school personality. However, on the other side of the equation, there are quite a few jokes that just leave you scratching your head in confusion. This trend of dated, edgy jokes carries on into the Gex sequels as well. At least this game has tons of great songs for you to listen to if you get tired of his constant references and quips. Seriously, this soundtrack slaps. It's the best in the series by far and has quickly grown to be one of my favorites from the era. Although some tracks can certainly be, well, interesting is the best way I can summarize it. So anyway, your mileage with Gex may vary depending on if you find him funny or just annoying. I would definitely say he leans towards the comedy fatigue side of things, especially due to his limit of pre-recorded voiceover quips that were programmed into the game. The limitations of his commentary become very apparent if you end up having to redo your levels during your playthrough, which is not a completely far-fetched concept whenever it comes to Gex on the Sega Saturn. On the other hand, this isn't entirely a bad thing. The game has a solid difficulty element to it, and in some ways, it can be a bit unfair and frustrating at times, but overall the game's mechanics are well balanced and the platforming is fun. One of Gex's standout features is his ability to wall crawl, which is always a nice feature to help add some depth to the action. Plus, who doesn't love those suction cup noises he makes whenever he's crawling? Need it. Naturally, this segues into the levels themselves. Since the franchise loves parodies, the game's world is broken up into a few distinct areas, each with its own unique themes and dialogue to reflect those areas. The Cemetery, New Toonland, Jungle Isle, Kung Fu Ville, and Rezopolis. There is also a hidden level in Planet X that upon completion brings about the special, true ending to Gex, but we'll talk more about that closer to the end of the review. Before we get too far, let's take a few seconds to explain why Gex is even here. The wisecracking Gecko is a wastrel living off the inheritance of his wealthy uncle. Must be nice. Enter Rez, a cybernetic demon-like creature who is the game's primary antagonist. His goal is to take over the media dimension and force TV networks to play terrible, low-quality TV shows and movies. A fate worse than death, being subjected to endless Ed Wood films. Rather than trapping Gex in space and forcing him to watch these god-awful films with robot friends, Rez wants to use Gex as his new mascot for the TV network and pulls him into the media dimension to do so. And this is where the game starts, as you begin fighting your way through Rez's minions and related cohorts in the aforementioned list of levels. First up is the Cemetery. As a horror movie buff, this level really speaks to me. Its design is self-described as the time and place where Abbott and Costello met Frankenstein. Wow, if that doesn't date things a bit, I don't know what would. But the level isn't just relegated to that time period. There are some nods to the late 70s and early 80s, with enemies like the Killer Tomatoes, which is a clear nod to Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and there is also Freddy's, who are just the love children of a bunch of slasher tropes, like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. I even noticed something that looks similar to Ghostface from Scream reflected in the moon. But this game actually predates the Scream franchise, so it's more likely a coincidence and just generic spooky Gould 493 or something like that. As for gameplay, these levels play out fine. I wouldn't say that they're mind-blowing in any way, but I genuinely do enjoy the boss fight. Morphina is more or less a straight copy of the possessed Reagan from The Exorcist. The fight is fun, the animations are crisp, and this fight displays some awesome usage of parallax scrolling. Defeating Morphina unlocks New Toonland, which is visually my favorite world, and why wouldn't it be? New Toonland takes inspiration from the world of cartoons past, and the popular art styles of Chuck Jones, Spumco, and Joe Murray, just to name a few sources of inspiration. The levels present a greater variety of gameplay here, with some serious platforming and puzzle-solving elements. Some of this is definitely to my dismay, like Knock Knock. This level is just straight trash. The level wraps up with what only could be described as Homer Simpson meets Boogerman. The final boss of the world is appropriately named the Flatulator, a Borborygmus riddled superhero who farts his way around the stage until you knock him out with one too many anvils dropped from the roof. Yeah, that's about as acme of an ending as you would expect. This Looney Tunes ending leads to the shortest world of the game, Jungle Isle. Jungle Isle offers some very solid platforming and well-rounded design, paying obvious stylistic homage to action-adventure heroes like Indiana Jones. It's actually a shame that this world only lasts for 3 levels, one of which doubles as the world's boss fight. Similar to the cemetery fight, the boss stands out with its unique design. This boss takes the form of a snake that pops in and out of holes in the walls on the map. You don't actually spend any time fighting this boss. Instead, you're tasked with climbing up a massive cliffside, which then triggers a scripted event in which a gorilla knocks boulders off the top ledge, smacking the enemy all the way down to the bottom of the level, where it's crushed underneath an impromptu rock tomb. The next level, Kung Fu Ville, is exactly what you would expect it to be. Another fairly fun series of levels, but definitely annoying in the vertical design aspect. There are quite a few areas where my gamer's intuition would have led me to believe that if I dropped down, I would die, only for that to not be the case at all, and that it's actually mandatory for me to fall to the lower path in order to continue the level. Gex's difficulty also starts to become much more prominent at this point in the game. The final boss of this world is more kaiju focused than kung fu or martial arts, but whatever. No one cares, it's close enough. This is definitely the least memorable of the 5 bosses within Gex. And here we are, Rezopolis. Oh boy, this stuff is straight up difficult. The platforming here will challenge you to your breaking point. But it's so cool, the place is a giant dystopian cable network hellscape. Circuitries, monitors, and other gizmos make up the overall design, while the bottom of the level is always filled with the threat of a liquid pool of lethal TV static. And yet on the contrary, Rez is your final boss? Not that bad at all. Platform, eat flies, shoot projectiles, clap clap, he's dead, and then you're done with the game. Congratulations! Or are you? In case you forgot, we have a hidden world in the form of Planet X. Planet X boasts the largest number of levels in the game with a whopping 8, but on the flip side, there's no boss to fight. To my understanding, Planet X was supposed to be in the main game, but was scrapped and made a bonus level instead. This isn't some genocide city zone half-scrap project. Planet X looks complete to me, so this strikes me as a really odd choice on the developer's behalf. Regardless, you can unlock Planet X by completing all of the bonus rounds in each of the previous areas. Unlocking Planet X brings a considerable difficulty check, but also some very unique levels to boot. Included within these strange levels are zones like Freefall, where your only goal is to plummet to the bottom and avoid lightning on the way down, and Saucer Section, where you have to ride a moving wall and dodge all the aliens flying at you. Freefall and Saucer Section are just some of the things that you'll find waiting for you within the mysterious Planet X. If you dare to visit Planet X, be forewarned. You are definitely in for a challenge. But it's weird. I keep reflecting on the fact that if you had no knowledge of it, you would likely completely miss Planet X. Nearly a third of the game's total levels, just gone. But I digress. Your reward for completing Planet X is nothing apparent. But if you go back over to Rezopolis and defeat Rez one more time, you'll get an alternate ending. Or the true ending, if you will. The difference is this time, however, you get a really long credit scene where the game just keeps throwing praise at you. It does nothing, it goes on forever, and it honestly feels tongue-in-cheek. Like the developers are just testing you one last time to see if you're patient enough to not turn off the game. Okay, well after 10 minutes of that, you get a slideshow of character sheets, storyboards, art concepts, and basically anything else that would have been tucked away during the game's development period. Normally I would say this is very cool, but first off, it's really low res. I can't see anything significant in these at all, to be honest. And the other is that it's a video. Screw that, just give me a gallery so I can go through at my own pace rather than another 10 minutes of this. After the tour of the art gallery, the game plays the actual final credits one last time, making this alternate ending nearly 25 minutes of weird congratulatory fluff. Definitely not a good reward for the notable challenges that the player had just faced to get to this point. Whatever, I guess. And with that, we've reached the real end of Gex. The game would go on to inspire 2 more sequels, but after that, nada. The game was shelved as Mascot games more or less died off, and platformers took a backseat to other game genres. Gex is a series that I would call a true cult game. I know I'm not the only person around here who wants to see the character return. From what I've gathered, Gex fans on the internet really want to see the Gex trilogy remastered for current platforms. In my opinion, forget about it. A remake only takes a dated IP like Gex and cleans it up with pretty graphics. Nice in theory, but I think the content itself would be super stale. The storytelling engine behind the Gex games is timeless. Therefore, I think he would really rock a reboot treatment. I mean, the concept would totally work in today's world. There is a plethora of current TV and media that is absolutely rife for being parodied and mocked by our wisecracking Gecko. There also exists the crossover world of streaming and on-demand media, so maybe we could even inject some new mechanics that reflect modern TV. Give it a Prince of Persia style rewind system or some other new school meta mechanics. A Gex reboot even opens the door to internet media, which truly makes the possibilities for a reboot limitless. Furthermore, many mascots are making contemporary comebacks due to the vested nostalgia that people have for certain video game icons. Mario's still raking in coins, Crash has had his first sequel in virtually forever, Sonic got a sequel to his movie, and Spyro, well, maybe not him. Sorry, bud. But this is leading into the perfect opportunity for Gex to be reinvented and reintroduced as a brand new character with modern day commentary. Maybe Crystal Dynamics would even be willing to conquerify the character and bring the series into uncharted territories by stepping into the world of rated M mascots. If done correctly, Gex could re-emerge as a popular adult character, like Duckman for example. Now, I'm not saying that I have the perfect solution for Gex, but I could go on for hours about his potential revival. I do think that right now is the best time for Gex to attempt a comeback. What with the oh-so-trendy fad of bringing back 80s and 90s pop culture as past generations seek to recapture their youth. Honestly, Gex's cult following is strong enough that some people have become vocal about adding him to the Super Smash Bros. Roster. Not that I would ever think that would happen, but it would certainly be enjoyable to hear his commentary in Smash Bros. Either way, I've now added my take to the endlessly growing collection of Gex videos on the internet. Hopefully Crystal Dynamics brings the character out of retirement sooner rather than later in order to appease fans like myself. For those of you watching today that haven't ventured into the world of Gex, I wholeheartedly recommend it. This is a great 2D platformer game with some interesting variety and amusing, albeit dated, humor. Furthermore, unlike some of the games we have played on the channel, Gex is fairly easy to obtain a copy of. The Saturn and 3DO versions will cost a bit more than the PlayStation version, which is to be expected, but the easiest way to experience Gex by far is through GOG on PC if you don't care about having a physical copy and just want to experience what this ridiculous reptile has to offer. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time here on Game & Browse.